Good evening, and thank you for being here. And I think I'm quite happy to be last because a lot of people seem quite jolly already. And I think it's also, since in the most recent times, the most I've learned about an organization that I'm not a part of myself without signing an NDA up front. My name is Thijs de Blok, and as said, I'm the CEO of Buurtzorg International. I want to take you on the journey that we as Buurtzorg went into and where it brought us now after 17 years of being on this journey of self-management, and how we've proven over those 17 years that management is really a lot of bollocks. Good. Buurtzorg, I'm sure that some of you have heard of Buurtzorg. If we ever anticipated for it to be an international organization, we would have given it a different name. As for myself, probably. The values that Buurtzorg believes in, Buurtzorg means neighborhood care, and we believe in social healthcare, taking care of each other and taking care of a community. Healthcare is overall one of the most regulated fields you can possibly work in, and throughout the last 30, 40 years, it has lost its personal connection with people. We've started to think of healthcare as a product. It's been cut up into little pieces, and people have been asked to all fulfill a piece of that without having interpersonal connections. So we said that has to change. We have to go back to those social healthcare aspects and focus on the relationships. The relationships between people, from a healthcare professional to a client, but also the people around the client. And how do we enable people to establish these connections and to maintain the relationships, and where relationships disappear, how to create new ones. We believe in solutions instead of indications. In a lot of places in the world where the healthcare is financially driven, people want to make sure that they get paid before they start doing things. And we say, well, if there's a risk of us not getting paid, and we believe in the professional competence of the people we work with, that's a risk we're willing to take. People need care, we would like to deliver care, so let's get to it. When we started the organization, we separated the primary process, the healthcare, from the back office procedures. As I said, healthcare is everywhere in the world heavily regulated, maybe even over-regulated. And we said we have to make governance, regulations, legislation understandable again. We don't want to just shove the legislation down the ladder and sort yourself out. We have to make it into understandable, sort of feasible text. And that's why we created a back office. And the back office was our kitchen table when we started. Now, for an organization of 15,000 people, it's one office in the east of the country with 45 people in it. So, quite lean. When we started Buurtzorg, all the IT systems that we were looking at, that we could possibly work with, were command and control driven. There was no system to function without managers. So we said, then we build it. So at the same time, we built an IT company, as we started a care company. But an IT company has different needs than a healthcare company. So also, if you look at a group of IT developers and a group of nurses, they may differ a little bit from each other from time to time. So we said the IT has to be co-developed by nurses. So when we asked, what IT do you use in your daily life, and this is 17 years ago, you sort of got a vague look, and some people said Facebook. That was it. So they said, why can't we just build a Facebook, but then for Buurtzorg? So that's how we got to work. A community platform where people can share pictures, stories, experiences, but also connect with one another without knowing each other and learn from each other. And as Thomas said, this collective learning started going. And people felt lonely. Work as a nurse in the community, in home care, it's quite lonely from time to time. But if you look then on the IT platform, and that another 800, 900, maybe 2,000 people are doing the exact things at the same time, that creates community, and people got in touch with each other. And then the scale of the neighborhood. If you decentralize a lot of things, the neighborhood is an ecosystem in which we all live. If you have good connections within your own neighborhood, you profit from them every day, and you know your way around the neighborhood. So that's how we came up with neighborhood care, Buurtzorg. And a traditional Dutch neighborhood has between 5,000 and 10,000 people in it. So if you work and live in the same neighborhood, there's not a lot you have to learn about it. It's a bit more healthcare related. I'll just skip through it. I'll just go through it quickly so we can get to the organizational structure things. Just healthcare was a mess. In 2006, when we started in the Netherlands, it was awful. It was probably worse than it is right now in the UK, and that's saying a lot. But there was a large standardization of care activities, so nurses were not asked to be nurses and problem solvers, but they were asked to be machines and all provide a part of the puzzle in the care chain. The capacity problems start to go to demographic developments. Still the aging population everywhere in the world where I go. We say, those are also problems that we are facing. So fewer nurses, fewer professionals for more and more elderly. And we said we have to start to use people wisely, not how they generate the most profit, but how they make the biggest social impact. So we started to measure social impact. Clients were also very unhappy at this time because it was not unusual for someone that needed care to have 30 care professionals, 30 strangers in their house in 1 month's time. So that's, for someone without dementia, that's not nice. For someone with dementia, that's a nightmare and often make things worse rather than better. So we said in 2007, this has to change. We can't change an existing organization. We have to start from scratch because the system is too broken. We started with independent teams up to 12 people, and if they would grow larger than 12 people, they would split. So as a system for organic growth, this is ideal. But it also means that the talent splits after a while. So we started thinking about roles. How do you divide the roles in the team? And how do you share the knowledge? And how do you share these qualities in the team to make everybody better? And the team was responsible for the entire and complete process. So no call centers, no managers, no team leaders. The initial contact between client and team would remain the contact between client and team. And this started taking off. In 2006, we had one team, but we got a lot of media attention because of people that thought it was a bad idea. So we were asked everywhere to come on radio, television, newspapers to say, how is this going to work without managers? And managers were saying, no, we are very needed. So they were going against it. And nurses from all over the country and groups of nurses from traditional organizations, they started calling us and they say, how do we sign up? What do we need? We say, you need a laptop or an iPad, you need a phone. In rural areas, you maybe need a car, and you need a small office, and off you go. And all these teams, with a few minor exceptions, but really a few, will normally break even within 7 weeks from starting. So we could generate a lot of momentum in this theme of nursing where people started joining the organization. And the turnover grew at the same pace from 1 million in 2006 to 500 million last year. And often when I go places, people ask me for an organizational chart of Buurtzorg. So that big green field, that's it. So that means 99.6% of the employees are nurses. So I'm quite lonely. This was proven to be a success. We reached stability in 2021, 2020. But a lot of other fields and a lot of other people were also interested in this way of working. And I always had the idea that self-management would be something for people with a certain level of education. You need to have a certain expertise or a certain connection with each other to do this. And then in 2016, we got a phone call from the Minister of Health, or the back then Minister of Health in the Netherlands. She's a big supporter of Buurtzorg, and a cooking and cleaning services company was going bankrupt. Social care at home for mainly elderly. And she asked, are you willing to take this on? So it's a company of 7 management layers. We said, well, the managers, they can go and find something else to do. But perhaps we should give it a go with the 4,000 people frontline. There was a lot of skepticism out there, also from myself. But we started organizing conferences, a bit of this size, several hundred people of a region in one go, and we put tables that maximum fit 12 people out there and say, if you would find a group of people that you would like to work with, that are close by, are similar to you but not too similar, if you have a team of only young mothers, then providing services between out of school times would be difficult. And I expected people to talk about themselves a lot, but it never happened. They always talked about the needs for their clients in the organization that they were already working for. Oh, if we are liberated from this hierarchical structure, we could this and this, or we could do one thing or the other. And this organization was going bankrupt. That's why we were flowing in. Then from one day to another, 4,000 new colleagues joined. I set up a crisis center with some colleagues, with several phone lines and laptops. And after 2 hours, we started checking the phone lines. No one ever called. No clients were unhappy. The world didn't collapse. But what we saw, because of those 7 management layers disappearing, for the same group that was going bankrupt the year before, we had a 1.8% profit margin the first year. 2.4% profit margin the second year. After the first year, we gave this group of people a bonus. They never had a bonus in their life. Bonus is for managers, and bonuses are not there for us. And it made a big impact on the life of those people. And we saw that a lot of these people were also aspiring to become a nurse and move from buurtdiensten, which means neighborhood services, to Buurtzorg. And with a shortage of nurses in the system, there's a lot of value in that. So for everybody that say, I would like to become a nurse, we pick up the entire bill for them to train as a nurse. And still, there's plenty of space there. Now, the skepticism around self-management, it was quite funny because a lot of people that believe in new public management and MBA, and things they teach you at an MBA studies, you need guidelines, you need control, you need command structures, you need to obey by certain rules. People thought that our patients were going to be very unhappy because there's no quality control. What do you do about quality? We said we employ high-educated nurses. The patient satisfaction overall in the Netherlands is about a 7 out of 10. Year after year, we got a 9, 9.2, 9.3. The employee satisfaction and the same skepticism was out there. Oh, your employees, they're going to have to always be on call. If you don't have a manager, there's no one out there to solve your problems. The employee satisfaction is a 9 out of 10, and we became the best employer of the country. 5 years back to back until it became embarrassing, and we said we take a back seat now. We have an 8% overhead, and this is not by accident. This is by design, and we said from the first day, 92% of the costs are directly care related, and we only allow ourselves an 8% overhead to do all the other things. Sometimes it's an unsolvable puzzle, but we could plan for every year, and the insurance companies were very happy that we were transparent and open and systemic about the things we were doing. Because a lot of care organizations, maybe let's not talk too much about the NHS, but they always have a bit of year left at the end of their money left over. So we could do things in a systemic way, and also with the IT in a SaaS structure, maybe not the cheapest structure, but we could plan for every client what the costs were. And we still have 1,200 new colleagues joining us every year in a field where it's virtually impossible to find people. 1,200 new colleagues join Buurtzorg every year. In the care model, we believe that a client-centered approach is key to success and also creates that interpersonal connection between customer and provider. If people get, after a hospital visit, and people have an assessment, they often are more full of questions than before they went to the hospital. What is this going to mean for my home situation? With the clients and the family of the client, we make a sort of translation. If you come from a controlled environment and you go to your own home, you want to know what that means for you. But we don't do it by just doing things. We take the client on the journey by, okay, this is how you could also prevent from going to the hospital again. This is how you could prevent a home situation to escalate. And in this preventive way of working, we've shown that healthcare is actually possible with 40% fewer resources than was done before. It's for the insurance companies, that's a game changer. This changes everything. So before we were talking about nickels and quarters. If you can reduce 40% of your hours, they say, take what you want and tell us after. So where a traditional care organization in the Netherlands needs about 140 hours per client per year, last year we needed about 72, 73, with better health outcomes. And it's all because of this onion model. Self-organization, I've heard a lot of things said also in the previous talks about trust. And trust is a key word, but trust by the person who gives trust is worth very little. It's the perception of trust, it's what it means receiving trust of someone. And who trusts who? And by this decentralized way of working, I often don't have an opinion. It's not that I trust people, it's not that I distrust people. I refrain from an opinion because they trust each other and I trust them as a team. And that's the only thing that matters. So within Buurtzorg and within the structure, the teams take care of their own recruitment, take care of their own sort of HR-like things. We don't have an HR department. It saves a lot of money and heartache. But by doing this and by having this idea of I only want to work with people that I deeply trust, you start to have different connections with people. And following these connections, you can be responsible of a small organization in a group of people without any formal structures. We don't have a lot of rules in Buurtzorg. I'm a bit anti-rules. We are called also the rebels of the Dutch healthcare system. But one rule is to use the IT system because we would like to get paid at the end of the day and show the service that we have done. But when the system is failing, when the IT system is failing, what a lot of organizations do is trying to change the people that use it, convince them of the importance of using the system. We say if the system is failing, it's the system's fault, and we have to reinvent what we're doing at that moment. And we've done that throughout the past 17 years, time after time after time, because also the people change. The generations change, the quality of IT changes. All our nurses are generalists, and generalists are natural problem solvers. So if you know a lot of one specific thing, and you're part of a team, the chance that someone is going to call on you for this one specific thing is very little. If you're generalist and you're a natural problem solver together with other natural problem solvers, it's the best possible outcomes for the people benefiting from your services. And 70% of our nurses are registered nurses. Just to give you an idea, we have a 17% market share in the Netherlands, but we have 40% of the registered nurses and still manage to provide care cheaper. Every team has its own educational budget. It's 2% of the revenue. They can do whatever they like with it, to a certain extent. And informal networks are much more important than formal structures, and I think the proof of that is here tonight, where it's good to just have a party sometimes, where you get to meet people and laugh and let off the stress a bit and think there's also more important things than dealing with stress all day, every day. The Buurtzorg web, how we developed it, is the relationship between the professional and the client is central. Outside of that, what I said, we have to register the hours, is the grip on the business, the communication in the care chain. So we made sure, in a position where we didn't have to, that everything was API integrated with the rest of the system. First they hated us for it, now they love us for it. The view on quality of care and transparency. So everything is available to everyone within Buurtzorg to see. So that means that if you would be a manager in a structure like this, normally it's the access to additional information that gives you your leverage. I see what you don't see, and therefore I'm going to tell you what to do. In Buurtzorg, this doesn't happen. So the teams have a dashboard, they have complete ownership of what's visible on the dashboard, but that also means that if something's not going well, they can take that responsibility from one day to another. They don't have to wait till the next quarter to hear from their leader or manager, oh, we did not well the last quarter, it's a bit late. So in this dashboard, they can also see the other teams, how they're performing. So if they see that a team is close by to them, that is performing better than them, and because there's no individual bonuses, but only team bonuses or organizational compensations, they can ask that other team, how have you achieved this? And can you help us to achieve the same? And that's the communal learning that's key to everything. So this access to information and this shared learning journey really becomes tangible in this. And it can be from productivity standards to healthcare standards to sickness rate that's a lot lower than other teams. So there's multiple things that you can learn from each other. As I said, when we started growing, there was a lot of attention from other places. And also the book that was mentioned before, Reinventing Organizations, it was quite a strange time, because when it came out, the phone started ringing and it still hasn't stopped. And we were, for the first couple of years, we were sitting there, we were like, well, we're this small care organization from Holland. What do we know about Taiwan? What do we know about Brazil? But everybody was interested in this way of working, and how do you get people engaged in this way of working, in this organizational structure, and how do you create real ownership without making someone an actual owner of the company? Because we are, in Holland, we are a foundation, so we're a non-for-profit structure, but we still make a healthy profit that we put back into the organization every year. Also in the Netherlands, there were a lot of other groups that were interested in an adjacent healthcare field, and we helped them establishing their organizations. And right now, there's about 18 different kind of organizations. Buurtzorg T, for example, there's mental health care at home for people. Buurt Wonen is small-scale living facilities for elderly, where it's not a facility setting, but people remain independent, but have the access to nurses if they need it. And in these different fields, we also have a lot of political influence. And one nice thing is that we've always been supported by all the political parties, although I don't agree with some of them. I'll never tell them. But the left wing, they really like this social structure that we have, and this taking care of people without worrying too much about how much profit you're going to make of it. And the right-wing parties, they really think about this entrepreneurial behavior and to be the chooser of your own destiny in what you do with work. So we always just say, even with a maybe personal bad election result, I say, oh yeah, of course, we go along with that. The cost benefits for care, but also in other fields, we've shown that the absence of traditional management structures just makes everything cheaper. And if you are willing to invest in the front line of people, then it's quite easy to do so. The growth is the difficult part. I advise a lot of startups that say, oh, we are self-managed. And I say, yeah, you have 4 people. And you didn't pick a boss. Well done. But by the time you don't know everybody's surname, or you don't know everybody's birthday anymore, it becomes more and more difficult to trust people. And this is a sort of pivotal point where you should say, maybe I will refrain from an opinion, because it makes me impartial, but it also makes me trusted, and I expect trust in return. And if you're inconsistent with this, if you make one slip up, then you destroy everything. So that's quite risky, but we managed to keep the principles that we started Buurtzorg on, that I explained before, the same for 17 years, without an exception. Even during COVID, when all countries, organizations were said, now we're really gonna make a short leash for everybody, we said, now we're gonna do exactly the same and just look at the results. So Buurtzorg International is what was created from all those phone calls after Reinventing Organizations. And Buurtzorg International is also the organization that holds the intellectual property to anything that we do with Buurtzorg, and this gives us the possibility to upscale all over the world. So right now we're in 26 different countries, from India to Norway, and from Australia to Brazil. And the system looks different everywhere. I spent a lot of years in Japan and Korea learning about their healthcare system. And in the end, one thing that they all have in common is that they have a system that everybody will use at some point in their life. And in this system work people that everywhere in the world, they say, I didn't do this for the money. I never met a nurse in my life that said, I am in it for the big bucks. But it's always based on intrinsic motivation. And all these systems that I see out there are trying to think that everybody wants to scam them constantly. And I always think it's so easy to trust nurses. It's in your DNA to take care of other people. And you see in a lot of places that once the system change and once it's less production driven and more focused on the humanity side of things, also the difficulties disappear out of the system. The book Reinventing Organizations, for the ones who haven't read it, I can really recommend it. It's not just about us. And also the self-management, how does it work? For those who are really interested, I brought 3 copies with me. Please don't attack me after, but I will leave them here. And our motto is keep it small, keep it simple. And if you work in a small, decentralized way, you can achieve big things on a national and international level. Thank you.